Welcome. Thank you for joining the South Carolina Christian Consortium. And this is our new program that we're calling Breaking the Borders of Sunday. And our heart behind this is our just understanding that sharing and living the gospel, it isn't bound to the four walls of Sunday. It's not bound to the four walls of a building. You are the gospel in real life. So our heart is focusing on the everyday, the real life marketplace moments where God shows up through you, through me. So I'm Sarah Beth Stone, and I help manage public relations, communications, all the things for the consortium. And I have joining me my husband, Jamie Stone. He's the vice president of the South Carolina Christian Consortium. And we are so excited today to have Mr. Eric Foust. Thank you for joining us, Eric. He is president of Custom Forest Products, and we know he has lived out the gospel in so many ways in the workplace. And we are just excited to hear from you, Eric, today about how you've grown in your walk with the Lord as a leader. So I'm going to jump right over to you, Eric. Hoping you can just kind of intro us as to yourself, how you came to be in the role you are today with Custom Forest Products.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here, Jamie and Sarah. Thank y'all so much. It's really exciting to hear your description of the program and what you're attempting to do, and God will honor that. So thank you guys so much for having me be a part of it. I really appreciate it. Born and raised in Spartanburg, and kind of always knew that I'd do something in the business world. My father was in business growing up, so watched that. And the neat thing about it is he's 89 and still here selling for the company. So that's been a huge blessing to be able to track with him. And I've got a son who's now in the business with us also. So really been blessed with that as a family. And to be able to say kind of how I got here, just as it is for anybody. It's a journey, and so many twists and turns. I didn't know what a pallet was in high school, and we sell wooden pallets for a living, and grew up. As we relate this to my Christian walk, I grew up in church, and so if you'd asked me if I was a Christian most of my life, I would, early on, I would have said, probably up until really getting into starting this business, I would have said, yeah, absolutely, I'm a Christian. And then, God showed me, what that meant. And because I was a good guy, if you will. I thought, right? I thought.
Yes, didn't we
And
all?
so, yeah, that's right. That's right. Let me make sure to be clear about that. So, the opportunity to be in this business, we started Custom Forest Products. I did in 2003, and in that time, we just had a birthday at the beginning of this month. So we're excited to continue to have this opportunity. I'd say probably the most transformational thing for me was I was doing a church program, learning about it's called Alpha, and I was learning about the Christian walk, and God really used that to show me what I thought wasn't really true about being a Christian, and how I needed to change, and thankful for that. And at about the same time, I was getting this business started. And so God brought those two things together, really married that up for me. I had no idea what that meant as, a Christian business owner. And so really floundered a bit in that thought process. Got to meet a gentleman who many of your listeners may know, Sam Hunter. And Sam was having a luncheon here in Spartanburg, to talk to business people, and really teach them what it meant to be a Christian and walk in your faith. And actually I invited Sam. I said, come out and maybe do your talk. I'll bring lunch in and people can do that. And so Sam came out to our company, and I was trying to find a chaplain. And Sam was, and
Okay.
I would say this to Sam and he would laugh. He was the best thing I could find. So, and so he did that for probably 2 years, and really was transformational. Saw some, real life change that happened, as we did that. And that then, Sam transitioned, away from doing it the way he was doing it at our business. It wasn't really a fit for him long term, and so we were so thankful for him. Around that time, God put C12, in front of me. And I was blessed to, be part of, Grant Edwards' first group. So we started in 2008. And I tell anybody and everybody that's been the best thing for my business and the best thing for me personally to be a part of that group. So, I'll stop there, but that's, really kind of where and how I got to the point of beginning to learn how to run my business for Christ.
Yeah. And what do you feel like are some of the key shifts that you went through, whether it was mentally or just actively in practice as an individual that translated into the workplace? What do you think? I mean, even your top three shifts you had to have. I know Ben Fields, who we've had with the
Mm-hmm.
consortium, he shared how he really had to recognize that all things are ultimately the Lord's, and he's just a steward, and it really relieved him of the burden of success and kind of the grip of control. How about for you?
Yeah, I think, beginning a recognition, and again, really learning through C12, with its content as well as the people. Ben wasn't in that original group, but he's a brother now, and people like Ben in the group, really sharing, their struggles and their challenges and their best practices.
Yeah.
And so, we're running a business and we want to, I'm in manufacturing. And so if I have a piece of equipment, I'm not a good steward of that piece of equipment if I don't have a preventative maintenance program. And if I'm not, doing something to make sure that that thing's going to keep, doing what it's supposed to do, what it's designed to do.
Right.
Um, and too many times businesses just, well, we're going to run it till we can't stop. We can't do that, whatever the case may be. But I think it's helpful to think along those lines. And then now you start thinking about, well, who are the most important people in your business? It's
Yes.
not the equipment.
Right.
It's the people that are there. Well, where did they come from? God brought them here. If I'm a Christian, God brought these people here, and He's given me the job of stewarding, to the
Mhm.
best of my ability. And so, beginning a mindset shift to say, what am I doing? I'm going to set up and make sure my equipment is running top notch so we can serve our customers and make a profit.
Right.
Well, am I, how am I treating my people? And
Mm.
if they're just a piece of the puzzle or cog in the wheel, or they're replaceable, ultimately, I'm not being a good steward in that arena. And so that's a huge mind shift was for me.
Yeah.
And then beginning, how do I live that out? What do I do different?
That's so good. And what do you feel like are some of the specific ways? Because I think this is really unique. It's unique and yet it's common across industries where we have to recognize the value of the people God has placed in our hands, um, in order to ensure that they thrive and are well taken care of. And then they want to stay and do really high quality work, right? And then we don't have to retrain. Um, what do you feel like is key for employers in terms of making your employees a priority? What does that look like? Is it benefits? Is it time off? Is it just incorporating them in decision making? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, the buzzword, of course, is culture. And it's a good buzzword. And if all businesses focused on having a good culture, whether they were Christian or not, the world would be a better place.
Amen.
Um, But for a Christian business owner, we've got to look deeper. You have a mission to, get people outside of those four walls of Sunday. And so if I go to church and I sit in the pew and listen and everything's great and I love what I hear, and I'm on the mountaintop when I leave. Well, when I go in on Monday and I'm barking and I'm, upset with
Right.
people and I'm not treating them well and I'm, perhaps not handling my business with my customers and my vendors in a way of an integrity.
Mm.
Ultimately, and I'm not judging. I'm just saying for myself, I'm not living out what I hear on Sundays if I don't do things differently. So what does that look like? Learning from Polydeck. Peter Freisel and his way at work was a huge influence for us. Peter
Mm.
joined our C12 group a little later after 2008, and a caring team, which I'm sure Ben might have mentioned, or others, because he's
Yeah.
got that as well. So what does that look like? Again, you go back to I'm going to have, if I'm going to take care of my people and keep them safe, I'm going to pull together a safety committee, right? And they're going to have a representative from every department, and they're going to talk about safety issues and training and what should we do and what should we have, buy better PPE, whatever those things are. Well, why not have a caring team and a caring committee that does the same thing? And
Mm.
so you're bringing together a representative from each department, and they are tasked to make the workplace better for the employee, better for their family, better for the community. And they get a budget and they have a monthly meeting. And now you really start getting traction, because it's not just me standing up and saying, hey, we really care about you. We're going to do good things. Ultimately, you've created something, and it's a system that has the opportunity to create funds. We have an emergency fund that helps people in a crisis. They can put in, hey, my car motor just died and it's going to cost me $1,000 and I'm going to lose my job if I can't get back and forth to work. Well, the caring team, that can go before the caring team and they vote on it. I'm not making that decision. I've given them the parameters, but I'm not making the ultimate decision there, as long as they follow the process, which you would in any good business operation. You'd follow a process to get to a result, and the result there is somebody gets helped. Now you talk about your culture.
Mhm.
You just change that person's potential life, at least in the short term.
Yeah.
But are they a fan of your business now? Absolutely, because you cared for them when they needed you, and then everybody else around sees it, and
Mm.
you start really getting, the snowball starts rolling downhill at that point.
It's so good. And you really make me, this is obviously real life investment on your end, but also within those who are working for you. It goes so much deeper than clock in, clock out, right? This
Right.
is building a family and community in meaningful ways. Because again, those are some catchphrases that businesses love to throw around: culture, family,
Yep.
community, work-life balance.
Yeah.
But when it's a true principle within firms, you see the fruit of it, right?
Right.
We're supposed to look at our fruit in our own lives, in our church, in our communities, in our jobs as leaders. Number one person to look at is me, right? But so you're producing real, tangible fruit for these individuals, and then they get to do the same thing. And what I've realized in hearing speakers like yourself and Ben and Mark Willis and Mark Lynch and so many people that we've spoken to and heard from, when you truly invest, this is the gospel. That's what I'm trying to get to. When we really invest in people and care with the compassion of Jesus, that gut-wrenching compassion because someone is suffering or someone is struggling, or just because they're a human being under our care, that's the gospel in real life. And then what do you know? A door opens, right? Because their heart is tenderized because they know they're of value to you. They've been taken care of by you in felt means.
Right.
And so then there's hey, what is this gospel you're talking about? Who is this Jesus, right?
Right.
Because they've seen him be real, tangible fruit in your life. And that's what it's about, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, again, I go back to something I learned from Polydeck and his way at work, when their thought process is exactly what you just said. And I'll go back to speaking to the business person. If again, my example of that piece of equipment. So if I'm going to spend, you know, X hundreds, thousands of dollars on a piece of equipment, well, what do we want? We want to evaluate our ROI, right? What's the return on that
Mhm.
investment? So I'm going to
Mhm.
put that in place. Then I'm going to run it and hopefully maintain it well. And after 3, 4, 5 years, I'm going to get my money back. And then it becomes something that, could generate profit for the business going forward. Um, and what I learned, and this is really true, is the thought process of EROI, and that's your eternal return on investment. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I can spend that money on a piece of equipment and need to have a functioning good business that generates profit that is what everybody needs to benefit from a business, including employees. Well, what am I doing for an eternal benefit for the people who work here? And
Right.
so, to your point, your opportunity to demonstrate caring first, because I can hand out Bibles, I can put a fish on my business card, I could give a sermon every morning. Those are all things I could do where I would be speaking at people,
Right.
and doing perhaps what I think is right to give them knowledge. But we all know it's really the witness, right? What have you done that
Mhm.
people look and see, and how can they then feel it? It's tangible, and that's what Jesus did, right? He
That's
was
right.
always given knowledge, of course, right?
Yeah.
He was the
Yeah.
perfect. He wrote the book,
Yeah.
but he came down to demonstrate. So.
Yes. Yes. Amen.
I'm curious, Eric, as you're talking about the culture that you're building there at your business, how you've seen the ripple effect out to your customers, to your community that these different touch points that we have as you have the business, and of course you are in business. You're looking to sell a product and be profitable, but at the same time, this culture that you've built where really people are trying to live out the gospel and serve each other, that's going to have an impact on your customer interactions, on your community interactions, and I'm just curious how you've seen that play out.
Yeah, I'd say, I think to your question of an example, say, depending on what faith denomination I should say you're in, a deacon, an elder, or whatever the case may be, Paul spoke to this, that there's a higher standard. If you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be somebody who's putting themselves out there as a witness, as an example, should I say. There's a higher standard there. So if we're going to demonstrate who we are to our people, but also to your question, to our customers, and I'd add to our vendors, um, certainly the community, but specifically in this example, the customer interaction, the vendor interaction, we have a higher standard and we have core values, which, again, businesses have core values, but our team says our core values every morning. We come together for a huddle, and we do praises and prayers, and then we say our core values. Our core values are tied to biblical verses. But then it becomes the way we try to make our decisions. So if we've got to make a decision and people don't know what to do, we go back to the core value. So if I'm interacting with a customer and there's a pricing discrepancy that's in my favor, I'm telling my people, you go to them first and you fix it. And it's not I don't have to demand it. They begin. It works together where people make those decisions. The other side of it, which I think is more important and more powerful, maybe not more important, but definitely more powerful, is when we make a mistake, how are we going to handle that? Because that's what we're being judged by. And, judgment is a tough word to use perhaps, but ultimately, if I put myself out there, and they know I'm a Christian business owner and I've got it maybe on my email, some Bible verses, I'm not perfect. And that's what we tell people about our core values, especially new employees. Like, these are who we are, but they're not there for you to be perfect. They're there that when we make a mistake, we go back to that and recalibrate. So with our customers, I've seen it be very powerful through the years, and vendors as well, where we are trying to go above and beyond to make sure that we're acting with integrity in what we do, And obviously, we all have examples and thoughts that come to mind in the business world where that doesn't happen.
Right.
And so that does allow us, hopefully, to be different. And then maybe, as you said, Sarah Beth, have some conversations about that.
Yes. Do you have any, I've seen the involvement your company and your teams have in the community itself, because that's one of the things we focus on a lot too, is it is not just about your bottom line, right? It's about if your business went away, would the community notice and be sad about it, right? Would they care? Or would they be like
Yeah,
celebrating, right? We hope not.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
what are some ways that you intentionally get into the communities to serve and contribute and make lives better outside of your employee base?
Well, one of the benefits of that caring team, if you run it this way, there's a component of a budget that the caring team has to have an effect on the community, and so they're able to vet opportunities and talk to ministries and nonprofits to see what might they contribute to, and so that's great because again, those are things that are happening, outside of me having to do something or generate something or think, well, Eric likes this, so let's do it. It's like, oh no, you guys go, as long as they're within certain parameters that we're looking to do. So that's powerful. Um, we've also recently gotten engaged with a ministry in Spartanburg named Come Closer. And that is an organization you may have heard of Serve the Berg. That's an event that they have once a year that's been, really successful where they're helping. It's been primarily churches, but now I've gotten engaged with them where we're trying to bring businesses to bear as well to really just look at what are the needs of Spartanburg, what are the problems, what are the challenges, and then, as they started, it's a 10-year-old ministry. They started out with the thought process, let's bring churches together across denominations and just go solve problems. Let's
Right.
go do things. And then God laid on my heart, well, businesses like to solve problems and go do things. And then thinking along the lines of so many Christian brothers and sisters that I've been engaged with examples like C12, let's bring that to bear as well. And it comes back to again your original, how do we get outside of the walls on Sunday, and then how do we in so doing, people are like, oh well, the Christians are out there actually doing stuff,
Mhm.
because unfortunately, it's just the way it is. Too many times the Christians are out telling people what they should be doing,
Right.
and that's not our commission.
No.
And
Well, and I
Our
would
commission is to, yeah, go ahead.
ahead. Neither is it writing checks.
Right,
It's so easy to say, oh, well, I was involved in the community. I wrote a check and gave it to my church or a program or a community, which
right.
thank God that we do that and that we have enough to be able to give to organizations. But isn't there a difference for me when I get out and look someone eye to eye who isn't like me or is in a different socioeconomic status than I am, and to just minister real time, real
Yeah,
person, and not
yeah,
even necessarily quote a Bible verse? There is a
right.
difference to
Yep,
human on human
yep,
interaction, isn't there?
yep.
Yeah.
There is, and one thing that has been really transformational for our business, and then I'll relate it to the community piece, is being a second chance employer. So we
Mhm.
were blessed to start with Jumpstart. I think it's about 13 years ago now.
Yes.
Um, and that opportunity was one that was, my heart wanted to do it. And this is probably an example for me a little bit about, being a faith driven business person and learning what that means. My heart wanted to do it, but I was a little scared of it.
Sure.
And Jumpstart was 100% the same way. And if Don Williams with Jumpstart was sitting here right now, he'd be like, "Yeah, it took me about 6 months to convince Eric to do anything." And I love Don; he's a brother. But I had these rules around who could work here, right? Trying to protect
Right.
my people, and ultimately, and it's a long story, but Jumpstart broke it down, and showed me, you're right, they showed me who they were
Wow.
and what that meant to be a member of Jumpstart. And in doing that, they came to bear here. As with most things we do, we think we're helping somebody, and God's blessing us, right? Teaching us, growing us. And that's what happened to me. It's what happened to my company.
Mm.
Our culture is so much stronger. We have folks in leadership who are part of Jumpstart. And that's just been a powerful witness about what does that mean. That has enabled us to go interact with other ministries. Drug rehabilitation ministries and other prison ministries. We have folks that work here, there. And so just recently, we've had that wonderful internal benefit from it. But recently, during the Serve the Berg event that I was just speaking about, our company actually went to one of the ministry sites and refurbished their house in a lot of ways, right? Did a lot of cleaning and painting and mulch and those types of things. And so our people got to go to actually where some of their coworkers live and see, their environment and what, which was wonderful, a huge blessing. So it's just been, such an interconnected opportunity that once you get going, that's what God does.
Yes. And that's where it's at, is being with one another and meeting real needs emotionally, tangibly, those felt needs, as we call them. That's really where it's at, is being out together, whether it's as a company and operating as a family with standards, but a family who cares, or you're out in the community doing the same thing. That's life, and that's good life.
Yep.
So good. One of the things I wanted to ask you too, we have heard such beautiful personal stories from some of our executives, and I wondered if you had any, and just a personal story of a way you've seen someone's life impact. It could be by yourself. Do you have any stories like that?
Wow. But it's
I know you do.
thankfully thankfully there's a lot, and so that's a blessing. I was actually sharing this story with somebody the other day, so it's top of mind. Because we were a second chance employer, this story was allowed to play out. And so had a gentleman come work for us several years ago, who, as it turned out here, when he was working with us during that time of his life, he had a drug problem. And because of that drug problem, and look, for anybody listening, you have to run a business, and you have to run it in a way that is first and foremost, and C12 will tell you this, C12 is for profit. So if you're not making a profit because you're giving everything away, or you don't have good rules, or you don't have good HR, and all this types of stuff, sooner or later you're going to go out of business. Well, you can't have a ministry if you're out of business.
That's
So
right.
part of our rules were that he was unable to be here when he was supposed to be here, and so he pointed out, we would call it in our system for HR, and he had to be let go. And it was really sad because everybody just saw in him what a great guy he was, and just what potential was there, right? So some years later, just walking through the lobby in my office, uh, this guy stands up and sticks out his hand and says, "Hey, Eric." And I look at him, and it's been several years. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, well, that's this person, but he just looks so different. And he was clear eyed, and, and he said, "I just want you to know, you guys influenced me while I was here, and I went and got clean.
Wow.
And I probably don't have a chance, but I sure would love a job." And honestly, just overcome in the moment, it was so exciting to see what looked to be change. And he came back to work and has been here several years now. Um, he now is a member of our caring team. He will tell you, I've heard this said, I could make more money somewhere else, but I'm never leaving this place.
Wow.
Now, I don't ever hold anybody back. If somebody wants to go somewhere and they have a better opportunity, what I tell them, and it might be somebody I really don't want to leave, but I tell them, I say, look, you know what you learned here, and we spread the love of Christ. That's our statement of purpose while we do these other things. I said, you got to go spread the love of Christ somewhere else now. But it's an example for us of somebody who needed and got a second chance. And then as we talk about second chance, it's so easy to, oh well, they did this, right? You just have this mindset of what their record is.
Right.
Yeah, we always say, guys, we're all needing a second chance, every one of us. Mm-hmm. And so that's a huge blessing to have people like that. He's now in a management role as well. So that's back to the culture word, right? A huge culture builder, and definitely he's one of the success stories for sure.
Wow, that's beautiful. Good one. Good one. Jay, do you have anything else? I know we have to wrap here in a second.
No, this has just been a real blessing, Eric. I really appreciate everything you've shared, and yeah, this is really what we're looking to glean from our people that have wisdom, and it's all around us. I think that's what we're really wanting to do with the group that we're pushing forward is just to try to find these wonderful examples of how the gospel is playing out in people's lives and yeah, outside of church. And I think that's honestly the majority of where it happens because the majority of time we're outside of church. So when we're living these things out in our lives and in our businesses and we're just promoting the love of Christ that's in us and through us, I mean, the things we see and the transformational changes in our own lives, but also in our communities and in our businesses, our employees, it's just amazing what God can do. So I really appreciate you sharing all of this.
Absolutely. And you hit on something there that I would definitely share as well. Sarah Beth, your original question related to, transformational shifts and that kind of thought process. At some point, God, I'd been doing it a while with the, C12 and that type of thing. But at some point, God said, you run a church. So you start playing that out because, yes, and I've been there and done that, right? Sitting in the pew, and this is where I go to church, and I go and we do this, and we talk about this, and I learn about this, and we pray. And then you go Monday, well, that's business and that's work and that's this and that's that. And like, well, no, what's really different, right? If you go to XYZ Baptist, Methodist, whatever church, you've got a church and it's run by people who love the Lord. They have a budget. They have, buildings and grounds. They have, probably police in the parking lot now, so there's safety. They've got people who are all in, they're all on board, and man, they love the place and they're going to do anything and everything. You got people who are naysayers and and they don't like this and they don't like that or whatever, right? Because it's human beings that go there.
Yeah.
And then what you're hoping is when the doors open, somebody walks in that doesn't know Jesus. And then how do you interact with that person?
Right.
Right. And honestly, and I've had conversations like this, I've had employees tell me, you guys are better at church than the church I go to. And that's not me being critical of church. It's just we can get into that mindset, right? And so ultimately, what's really different about what I'm doing here and what God's asking me to do here? Because we have all those elements and all those components. We want to go out and do mission work. We want to make sure we're taking care of people internally and all that. So I'd put that out there to folks to think about, maybe that helps somebody make a really big shift. Yeah, I go to XYZ church on Sundays, but I run, CFP Inc. in my case, Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And we're a church as well. And if we treat it that way, it makes a huge difference.
Amen.
But
Wow. That's a perfect segue to close. Eric, that was so good. Thank you so much for just sharing your life and a little bit of your journey and your wisdom. It's such a beautiful reminder because when we really think about the church, right? If Christ is the head and we are the body, then that's it, right?
Yep.
It wasn't a building to ever to begin with. And thank God for buildings where we can go and
Yep.
fellowship and commune with Him and with each other. But boy, it doesn't end there, right?
Yep.
Maybe it begins there, but it usually begins in the home and on the road.
Yep.
So,
That's
in
right.
the business. So, thank you,
Yep.
Eric. I'll let you hop off if you want to
Okay.
jump off, and then we'll just wrap this, and then I'll
Okay.
play it all together when.
Absolutely. Great to meet you both, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. You
thank
have a
you,
good
Eric.
one.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. So thank you for joining us today, the South Carolina Christian Consortium, on our first program of Breaking the Borders of Sunday. I hope that you have heard something a little different that's maybe shifted your mindset as a business leader, a manager, an employer, a parent, a student. So as Eric said, you are the church. And what does that look like for you in your life? Look how you can share the gospel, living it out in the everyday, the real life, and the marketplace moments. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.